Hello everybody, Azim here. Today I will teach you how to create a Node.js application which works on two tools, that is Node and Redis. So if you have a hard time in installing these tools and managing these tools for the application in your local computer, we can use the Docker and Docker Compose for multi-container management. As you can see over here, we will create a Node.js application using Docker container, and we will use a Redis container to cache the memory for the Node.js application. And this will be managed by Docker Compose, which will create a network for both of this container to discover themselves. Okay, and in turn we will have an application, so whenever you visit that application in your local host, it will count the number of visits. So whenever you refresh, your visits will be displayed, like how many times you have visited, using the Redis cache system, which will be connected to the Node JS application using container management, which will be deployed as a containers. So let's go to Visual Studio Code and let's create a folder called visits. Not here. Okay, and let's create a package.json file which will tell like what kind of dependencies are needed for our current project. So we will say that dependencies required currently is express. We need an express of any version. Okay, and an arrow mark. We need an express. There's a typo. And then we need Redis client so that our application can connect to the Redis container. So we'll use the version as 2.8.0. Okay, I guess this is perfect. Let's go to the scripts needed to run our application. So we'll say there should be a start command which will run the particular command as node and index.javascript. Okay, so we are good to go. Our package.json file is good. Dependencies express required as any, and Redis client required is 2.8.0, and scripts which needs to start the application, that is start command, which will run node space index.javascript file. Let's create one more file where our index.javascript, where our programming will be there to make sure how many visits are there in that particular session. Okay, so we'll create a variable called express and say we require the module of express. Okay, and we'll need a Redis client, so we'll say require Redis, and then we'll say that we'll store the express methods into application. So let's store it. Then we'll use the Redis method to store a variable in Redis container. So first we'll use the client method to create a connection between our Node.js application to Redis. So we'll say that Redis dot, the method is create client. So the input needed is the host name. Host name will be the service called Redis server, I'll tell you as soon as we create a container which will be named as a Redis server, and the Docker will recognize this as a server and make sure it gives it for the Node.js application. So I'll tell you in the forward video. So the host name is Redis server and the port is default port number, that is 6379. Okay, let's go to the application. Whenever application is used by the path of slash, it should respond. First it'll take the request from the browser and it should respond with the respond variable. And let's create a arrow function for this, where the client will be, okay, first we need to set a variable inside the Redis container after the connection, that is client dot set the variable called visits to 0. Okay, and then we'll use client dot get the variable of called visits, and a callback function error and the variable visits. So we'll say respond with the text is number of visits are plus the variable visits which we have initialized in the callback function. Okay, and then we will say that, and we'll send it to the Redis so that it overrides the visits with the new number from the visiting. Whenever the user is visiting, it will override the variable in the Redis. Okay, so we'll say set this particular variable visits with, as it's a string, we need to parse it with integer, because it'll be stored as a number when we visit into the browser. So in that particular Redis client it is a string, so we need to parse it and then give it to our Redis client. So I'll say parse the visits to integer and add 1 to it. Okay, so let's close it with semicolons. Okay, good. I think it's good. Okay, and now let's make sure our application is available on the port number 8081. Okay, and an anonymous function for consoling the out, getting the logs. So we'll say console.log listening on port 8081. Okay, let's send it with semicolons. Let's check our application. Okay, I think this is good. Now let's create a Docker file for it. Okay, let's create the Docker file. So we'll say from node alpine, and the base image should be node alpine, and working directory should be an in the app folder in after the root hierarchy, and then it should copy the package.json file. So whenever there are new changes, the package.json file will be copied first and install all the dependencies so that it doesn't consumes time. Then we'll say run and pm install the dependencies, and we'll say copy the whole files to the working directory, and we'll say to make sure the container is up and running with the command called npm and start the script. Okay, with the start command. So our Docker file is ready. Let's make sure our container is up and running fine for now with single-handed. So let me check where I'm. Okay. Yes, I'm in the path. Yeah, now I'm in the path. Let's run the docker build command to make sure the image is built and check whether the container is running single-handedly. So we'll say okay, there are few issues. So let me just remove the apostrophe and save this file. Docker build my repo name and the application. Let the we will tag it with the repo name, my repo name, and the image name will be visits application with the latest tag, and the Docker file is available here. Let's run. Okay, it says copy requires at least 2 arguments, but only one was provided. Okay, so to the current directory, and let's copy all the files and save this and run it again. Okay, it is pulling the Docker Node Alpine image. It's now installing all the dependencies. Okay, now it's available. Okay, it's available here. Let's run this particular image. Docker run. So let's run it and see what. Oh, see, it's giving an issue while connecting to the Redis server. So I guess it's fine. So let's create the Redis container using Docker compose file. So Docker compose dot YAML file. So Docker compose is always written in YAML. That is yet another markup language. For now, we don't want any extension. Let's say that we want a version of the Docker compose management as 3 version. Let the be version, and services, we'll run 2 services for now. So services meaning the containers which are managed by Docker compose. So we'll say, so one will be the Redis server. So as you see over here, I have given this first service name as Redis server, and which will be the host name when the container is running. So as you go to index.json file, here I have given the host name as Redis server. So the container which will be running as a service name will be Redis servers. So the Docker gives this particular service name to Node as a host name. Okay, so Redis server should have the image of Redis. Okay, in quotes, and that's fine for Redis server. And we'll create an application for where our this particular Redis container will be running with a service name called Redis server, and our visits app should run with the uh, it should build and run the current Dockerfile, and which is placed in the current directory. Okay, and port should be an array. We'll give it an array for now, so we'll say 3001. That is mapped from the external request to internal request. Container should be 8001. Container will be running that particular application in 8081. Over here we are saying that application should be listening on 8081, so that's why we have given the visit application, that is this particular container, that is visits application, should run in 8081 and should listen from external world, that is 3001. So our docker compose file is ready. Let us say, okay, let us the command used to run the docker compose file is docker. First, whenever you install docker compose file comes pre-installed with it. So docker compose -v, so you can see the version is there, our docker compose is there. So whenever you write docker compose, you can see the available commands with it. Now our application is ready. Let's run docker compose up, and if you want to run the services in the background, you can give docker compose up -d, but for now we want to log it, and as the external port number is 3001 and the application port number is 8081, as I told you, the application internally will listen to 8081. So let's run and check the logs. Okay, it's created. So can you see it has created a network called visits default, where the container internally can connect to the Redis server container can internally connect to visits container app. So it's telling the application is running. So let's go to the localhost 3001 for now. So let's check. Okay, so there's our respond dot send, where the content is number of visits, and the visits from this is the particular visit variable from Redis. Let's check 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Okay, whenever we are refreshing. Okay, so as you can see, our application is up and running fine. But in case if you want to say that so you want to restart if there is anything, like whenever your container, your node application container is exiting, or you have any errors, you want to make sure that container is always up and running, you would say always. By default it is no, or else you can say on failure. Okay, so whenever there is a exit status of 1, it will restart the container. Okay, if because the failure exit status code is 1. For now, let us check the uh, let's split the terminal, and the command used to check how many services are, or how many containers are running within the directory, using docker compose ps command. One second, I have written docker compose ps, right? Okay, where am I? Oh, so I should be in node. Yeah, I should be in the directory of sim visits. Okay, here I can give the command where the Docker file is located. Yeah, so our containers are over here, which are up and running. So this is our application, which is whenever we refresh, it will cache the particular content from Redis and display use it by a node application and serve it to the browser. So this is what the application is. So in case if you have enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.